Now, to bring about this improvement of the system, you basically have to make substantial changes in the national policies and in the subnational institutions and capacities. So let's review very, very briefly what are these changes. First of all, in terms of national policies that need to be changed. Essentially, three major policies are really critical for the implementation, for the adoption and implementation of a territorial approach to local development. First of all, of course, decentralization policies. We need a decentralization policy that leads to decentralization reforms which are enabling the development of a better system for local development management, which really are conducive to local development. The essential point, I mean, there are many dimensions of this, but the essential point to stress here is the decentralization policy of the country should stress autonomy and accountability of local authorities. The quality of the decentralization policy will be measured by how it addresses the issue of autonomy and accountability. Why do we need autonomous local authorities? Well, because of what we had said, if we don't have autonomous local authorities, we cannot ask local authorities to do the two things that they should do in promoting local development. In other terms, we cannot ask them to improve the efficiency of the resources of the state, which they would be responsible for implementing. Because, as I say, if they don't have any autonomy, there is little added value that they can bring to those policies. Why devolve or delegate to a local authority a policy if the local authority has no autonomy to bring additional value to bear on those policies? If you don't do that, you better stay with the deconcentrated agencies of the state to deliver those policies. A local authority must be autonomous both to improve the efficiency of the resources of the state and the locality, adjusting national policies to the context, improving what the economists call the allocative and productive efficiency of those policies and programs in the locality. And of course, if they don't have autonomy, they can even less do the second part of the story. They cannot go out, take initiative, and go out and mobilize the people and mobilize resources from the people for local policies, their own development policies and programs. So autonomy is absolutely critical. Actually, if you have this, if in your decentralization policy you don't consider local autonomy, it means that you are simply giving up the objective of local development. You are not interested in local development because non-autonomous local authorities cannot deliver that. The additionality, the incrementality cannot be delivered by non-autonomous local authorities. That's often the paradox of so many decentralization reforms, which are decentralization without autonomy. They basically boil down to a form of deconcentration, and they cannot be considered as real decentralization reforms. So if you don't have autonomy, you give up the objective of local development. If you don't have accountability, well, if you don't have accountability, I mean, if local authorities are not accountable to both the state and their own constituencies, you then have another set of negative effects. If they are not accountable to the state, they may you may have what is called the runaway local governments. Local governments that create problems for the state, macroeconomic problems in many cases for the state. And if you don't have a local authority accountable to their own people, through participatory mechanism, you have a serious risk of capture of the local authorities by local elites for their own purposes. So if you don't have accountability, better don't decentralize, because whatever resources you send out to the local authorities from the state are resources that you are not using, but once transferred will be used in an even less efficient and effective way. So you are wasting resources. So if you don't have autonomy, you are giving up local development. If you don't have accountability, you are giving up a portion of national development. You are basically reducing your own ability to promote development as a state. Hence the need to have both of them as a critical feature of the decentralization policy. Decentralization policy is critical, of course, but it's not the only one. We have two other policies: the urban agenda, or urban development policy, and the rural development policy. And they will be, both of them will be critical for achieving territorial development. This will be, national policies, both for urban areas and for rural areas, which recognize the importance of local authorities, and for all what we have said before, empower local authorities to put in place a new generation of urban development policies and a new generation of rural development policies, characterized by those principles that we have discussed before: accept and try to manage rather than counter urbanization, rather than resist urbanization. Connect, integrate rural areas to the global market through focused interventions, combined with local economic development, and a number of other features which we cannot go through in this not even in 15 minutes. So let me conclude then with the other set of changes. We said we need national policy changes. We also need subnational, institutional, and capacity development. What are the key institutional changes and capacity development that we need to realize at subnational level to help improve the local development management system and lead to territorial development? First of all, effective institutions of intergovernmental cooperation. We also need local leadership and administrative capacity development. And finally, we need active citizenship and public-private partnerships. Okay, why institutional intergovernmental cooperation? Because, as we said before, in a multi-level system of government, relations between levels change from hierarchical to contractual to negotiated, and therefore the setup of appropriate institution, appropriate fora, for example, for coordinating sectoral planning and territorial planning are critical. We also need local leadership and administrative development, of course, and this is because in any at any level of the decentralization reform, any level of local autonomy, there is something that a local authority could do. And it's extremely important that local authority don't take a passive attitude or a complaining attitude, hiding themselves behind the problems that certainly exist in terms of the legal and regulatory framework that frames their action, because yes, those problems are real, and the action of local authorities, particularly the lobbying through their national association, is critical to change that legal and regulatory environment. But whatever that legal and regulatory environment is, there is always some space for local leadership to take initiative and to reach out to their communities and mobilize resources. Conversely, there is a need for active citizenship, I mean, there is a need for in the civil society for a new attitudes, and particularly in this sense, particularly responsible will be non-governmental organizations and other community associations. There is a need to go beyond a passive and sometimes even hostile relation between communities and community organizations and their own local governments. towards a more cooperative attitude, and meaning that not only the civil societies, the communities will need to be involved in the planning, for example, of the resources of their local government, or in the auditing of the performance of their local governments. They will also need to be involved in the actual implementation of the programs and projects that their local government will finance or co-finance through them. A much more cooperative attitude and an involvement in co-provision or co-production of services and development projects is required by the civil society as a whole.